if we were to have another coronation in the next few years, would Harry be there? I don't think William would invite him, and I don't think Harry would come. So, Kate, let's analyse the day of days, the day of reckoning, the day that all of us last week were going, will they, won't they, will they, won't they?
There's that brilliant piece, wasn't there, beforehand? Kevin Meyer wrote in the Times saying that, surely there will be some way to get two people in the same city into the same room at the same time.
Well, it was interesting because over the weekend, looking ahead, a few of our colleagues wrote big front page stories saying Harry and King to meet.
Well, I never thought they would, you see.
And then there was some mood music coming through from the palace on Saturday that, off the record, that meeting hadn't actually been scheduled and the request from Harry hadn't yet come in to see his father, because it's not just like normal families where you pick up the phone and say, I'm in town, can I come round for cuppa? Things have to be scheduled into the King's very busy diary. And there was all that speculation. And then Harry landed on Tuesday. And then very soon after he landed, we got this statement from his spokesperson, which I'm going to read out, Kate. It unfortunately will not be possible due to His Majesty's full programme to meet. The Duke, of course, is understanding of his father's diary commitments and various other priorities and hopes to see him soon. Analyse that, Kate.
That was casting shade, as I think they say in California, onto the palace. I just think they were so loaded, that statement. First of all, the fact that there was a statement at all in the first place saying, I wanted to meet the King, but he's obviously too busy. He's got other things to do. And it was that other priorities, wasn't it? That line, I just thought, and I'm not one of them. That's what Harry was saying. I'm not one of those other priorities. And it just, everything they do when they put something out officially. I remember speaking to the people and saying, is this guidance from Harry's lot? This was coming from the Sussex camp. Is this guidance? Are you happy for this to be on the record? And they said, yeah, attribute it to a spokesperson. So it was very much, they wanted it out there on the record. And then it meant the palace was on the back foot yet again. How many times have we seen that with the relationship between Harry and the King? But then people in the palace were saying, well, it's not entirely clear whether an official request, like you said, has come in. So, recollections may vary yet again. Yeah, I think, God, it's just so sad, really, isn't it, that both of them were in town for, a whole day and couldn't find a way to meet. And, that the end of that statement, he hopes to see him soon. It's left hanging, isn't it? But he has no idea if he will see him soon. Of course, Harry came in February for that 24-hour dash to see his father after he'd said he had cancer. And there was a way found in very full diaries to make that happen. And even that was brief, but Harry was apparently glad of it. It was less than 45 minutes because we saw Harry go in and then the King came out about 45 minutes later. So the meeting was, in that short slither of time. And it's right to say that, of course, the royal family have different... that they operate differently. The King's diary, he's just come back to public engagements. It's very, busy. He's booked in. Every minute is accounted for. It's like a military regime. Well, but, if he wanted to make the time, he is the King. 10 minutes with his son. Yeah. I looked at the court circular this morning to see what the King had been up to yesterday. And it looked like... As published in the Times. As published in the Times, court circular. It looked like he was busy from the afternoon onwards. He was receiving people at Buckingham Palace, various military people, and then he had, obviously, the garden party at the palace. Then he had his weekly audience with Rishi Sunak. But I didn't see anything in the court circular in the morning. But then he doesn't put his medical appointments in there. Not that I want to be that, True, that's true. But that is still ongoing every week as well. But having said that, you never know what... Half an hour, cup of tea. 10 minutes. It's a shame it couldn't be found. I just thought about it and I thought, how... So technically, we've just been marking 1 year since the coronation. That was this week. Mm-hmm. Harry, in that year, has seen his father once for half an hour. Yeah. And no matter how you look at it, that's incredibly sad. And I wonder whether, that last meeting we just talked about in February, it was only half an hour, but very soon afterwards, Harry gave an interview to an American network and he talked about that meeting with his father. Didn't go into detail, but he talked about it. In a way, yeah. He hinted at a kind of reunifying effect, didn't he?
Yes.
That sort of cancer and various illnesses can have within a family, not specifying his own. But he sort of said, I'm coming back to the UK. I'd like to see them more. I hope I'll be able to see my father more. And that just hasn't happened. No. But then the last time he met, his stepmother Camilla was in the room for the whole meeting. And I do think there's a lot of trepidation in the palace that is this going to end up on the next Netflix show? When he did his autobiography, he intimated there was lots more material, perhaps for another, second volume or something. So there's that. I think there's still that fear that anything that can be said in private might become public. But the PR, when I'm looking at it from the outside, I think most people will think that's pretty shoddy that the king couldn't make 15 minutes to see his son, who is actually here for something that is generally, perceived to be brilliant. His Invictus Games 10-year milestone, something that unanimously people support. I think it's a good thing to support wounded servicemen and women.
Well, all the headlines sort of yesterday and today were 2 miles apart, but never further apart. Rift.
And
The
that
royal
day,
rift.
and then just after we had the Harry spokesman saying, we wanted to meet the king, but sadly, it's unfortunately not available. We had the note from the palace about Monday's engagement, which takes place on Monday, during which William's going to hand over. The king is going to hand to the Prince of Wales, to William, the colonelcy of the Army Air Corps, which is, of course, Harry's old regiment. Of course, he wasn't in the running for that because he doesn't do official duties anymore. But I just thought the timing of announcing that big joint engagement with the king and William, I don't think any of that timing is ever coincidental. They released that on that day.
Well, didn't someone in the palace say a couple of years ago when the Queen posed with Justin Trudeau in a blue and yellow dress in front of blue and yellow flowers at the outbreak of conflict in Ukraine, nothing ever happens unless it's for a reason. So we look forward to on Monday, we've just had one son not see his father, and then on Monday we're going to have the very powerful images of Charles handing over the colonelcy of the Army Air Corps with William flying a helicopter, because of course he was a helicopter pilot, but the co-pilot gunner, the Apache helicopter pilot, was Harry. Mm-hmm. All very sad, I think.
Very sad. So the Duke was greeted with cheers as he arrived alone at the cathedral, because Meghan and his children had stayed away. But he looked well and animated. He looked at ease.
And there were great readings by actors and service people alike. And the Dean of St Paul's, the very Reverend Andrew Tremlett, paid tribute to Harry's decade of profound and transformational work carried out by the Invictus Games Foundation. And of course, he might not have had his royal family there, but he did have his family there. He had Earl Spencer there, his uncle. He had Jane Fellows there, his aunt, his cousin George McCorquodale. So the Spencer family were out in force.
There was a lot of warmth there between them when he greeted them as well. I think he was very pleased to have their support there.
Yeah.
But then that's bringing the Diana element as well, isn't it? And the Dean added that we pray for a world where justice shall reign and where the nations will find their longed-for unity. So, does it matter if the royals are not united, do you think?
Well, it's the new reality that we've grown accustomed to in the last few years. When we were, before our time, Kate, before we were on this beat, in the Wild West of the 80s and 90s, the family was very disunited in terms of, the War of the Waleses, all the divorces in the royal family, Charles and Diana, Andrew and Fergie, the Princess Royal and her first husband. There was a lot of discord then, and it did damage the royal family. I think it was acknowledged that those years were very damaging for the royal family. And now we have a whole different kind of discord and lack of unity. And I think, every time you look at the polls, the royal families, members of the royal family here are relatively popular still. The King, the Waleses. But when you look at people are being asked questions about, do you wish the royal family would come together? And actually people outside St Paul's yesterday, they do. And I think the public do think it's very, very sad. At the same time, discord in a dysfunctional family, I think, humanises them a bit, because we can all relate to that, can't we?
Oh, absolutely. I think every family's got elements of, discord, and I don't know any family that doesn't, to be honest. And I think that it does humanise them, and I think that's what the King's reign, where that is kind of different from Queen Elizabeth II, who kind of kept it all in sync, steering the ship in the right direction. Nobody would fall out of line. Prince Philip was there and tried to keep everybody in line. And then this is more of a kind of human monarch who has his failings. He gets frustrated with pens when they don't work. He's on his second marriage, much more happily married now with Camilla than he ever was with Diana, of course. But yeah, I think these things happen in families, and we're seeing it play out. And I think that it's interesting to see how they react to it and how they see it.
I suppose for Charles, one of the things that I'm very interested in with this whole family dynamic is when you speak to courtiers and friends trying to bang the drum for Charles, the word they often use, the C word, don't worry, it's not the bad C word, is his convening power. And they talk about Charles being a great convener and bringing people together. But he is not so far able to do that with his family. Ultimately, I know Harry has done things that have upset the family, you know, the Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the claims in Spare about the family. But you've got to acknowledge that that's how he felt. And I think as time goes on, it's going to be increasingly problematic for Charles to have this very disunited family, with him not being seen to be the bigger man, the king, the monarch, the father, extending the hand of love to his son. And of course, the only working royals missing from the garden party celebration or the Invictus Thanksgiving were the Prince and Princess of Wales.
William has been conducting investitures in Windsor this week, and Catherine is not undertaking public duties due to her health. But now William is also out and about.
And at this very moment, Kate, as we record this, William is starting a 2-day visit to Cornwall and the Scilly Isles.
Sunny Cornwall.
So he's just arrived in Cornwall and he's going to something very important, very close to his heart. Today, for the first time, he's going to see the plans of a £3 million social housing project that he's building on his Duchy of Cornwall land in Nansledden, which is a suburb of the Cornish seaside town of Newquay. And he is building and funding a £3 million social housing development to tackle homelessness. So these are flats and houses, 24 of them, that will start to be built this year. They'll be ready by the autumn of 2025. And they will be available to people who are at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness in Cornwall. It is a joint project with the Royal Foundation and the Duchy, with St Petrock's, which is a homelessness charity that William's working with, and it's very close to his heart. And it's something he talked a lot about when I interviewed him last June. And during that interview, I said to him, well, you know, you're about to launch something, a big initiative on homelessness, which is Homewards, his big project to end homelessness in the UK. But you have many houses, access to quite a few palaces and castles. What about putting some housing on your land? And he sort of shifted in his seat, and I was like, so there are no plans for affordable housing.
So it's your idea? You're claiming credit for it?
Well, no, I'm not. and there was a sort of silence, and he went, well, no. And I was like, and he went, social housing. And the press secretary sort of shifted slightly uncomfortably in his seat, and I'm like, great, social housing on your land, headline. And
now he's been shamed into doing it.
To be fair, a lot of people were like, ooh, well, are you going to put your money where your mouth is?
Well, that's quite a good point, because is it enough? Because there is a huge problem. There's lots of problems, we know, in Cornwall with people having second homes down there, and then local people just can't get on the ladder at all.
Well, homelessness has gone up a lot in the last couple of years, and it was made a lot worse by COVID, exactly for that reason, with people being priced out of the housing market because staycationers went there and landlords just removed their housing from the private market and put it on for sort of holiday lets. So it things.
And he's part of that as well, I suppose, because he owns the Duchy of Cornwall now as the Prince of Wales. It's a hugely wealthy organisation, brings him tons of money for him every year. Is he doing enough, though? I mean, it's all very good for a kind of soundbite and to say he's going to end homelessness within 5 years, which seems quite an ambitious task, and to have sort of 24 new homes. But, you know, one wonders whether he could be doing more.
I think it's a good start. I think it's good to sort of put your money where your mouth is. And I think the whole point of the Nansledden project is William's very keen to try and encourage other landowners to do the same, to build much more social housing on their land. And it's interesting, people sort of close to the Prince talked about, you know, the MOD and the Church of England having these vast swathes of land that privately owned, which, you know, they don't release to build social housing on. So I think he will do more. I think there are plans for other projects on Duchy land. But, you know, I remember when I was interviewing him last year, he said, you know, I know people will sort of say, you're a prince, you live in big houses. I'll come in for a lot of flack trying to tackle homelessness. But for him, I think he feels it's much better to try and do something where he can than just not do anything at all. And homelessness, it's not, you know, for him, it's been something he has been passionate about since he was very young, since Diana took him to...
She did.
to all those shelters, the Passage, Centre Point.
Sleeping overnight. And
exactly.
and the big issue as well. He's
Yeah.
been quite proponent of that.
Going
as a
out in the streets
magazine.
and selling it. Yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
good start. I think it's a good start.
Well, I think that's the thing about Adelaide Cottage as well. When they moved up to Windsor, I remember doing the story about Windsor, and they were very, very cagey about confirming that story to me. But I had it on really good authority that they were moving, and broke the story that they were going to move up to Windsor. And it really struck a nerve. And I think, obviously, because it's bad PR,
Another house.
you know, we've spent a lot of money as taxpayers doing up Kensington Palace. Of course, they also have Admire, their private gift from the Queen, which is up in Sandringham. But Williams are very aware that, you know, like you say, he's not in a very strong position to preach about these things particularly.
And then when he became Prince of Wales, there was a lot of briefing, wasn't there, that he wasn't going to be acquiring another house in Wales because the King has a house in Wales that we cannot pronounce. We won't even try and pronounce. It's like that long.
Yeah. But that's because also the King spent a week in Wales every year, which William hasn't done since he's been Prince of Wales. There's been other stuff going on, but still.
Yeah.
But he said he was going to sort of Airbnb, because there was all the great headlines of heir, as in heir to the throne, Airbnb.
Yes, I see what you've done there.
Yeah. I'm wasted on the Times. I should be on the Sun.
You should be a headline writer on the Sun.
Yes.
That's what you
Dream
should be.
job.
So it's been an interesting mixed week. You've had Harry out on manoeuvres doing his Invictus thing, William doing his investitures on the same day, but then focusing on homelessness, which is his big thing this weekend, and then the King, the third player. I mean, I feel bad for Charles. We're describing him as the third player in this saga. It's like he's the bronze medalist, but actually, you know, he should be the top dog.
He should be the top dog. I think he certainly thinks he is, and most people think he is. But
We're describing him as the third player in this three-way Viking saga of Harry, William and Charles. The King Charles.
so it's fair to say, and all the papers are saying it,
Even ours, so it must be true.
it's fair to say that King Charles did not hold back at the Palace Garden party in greeting well-wishers. He was shaking hands, grinning, looking very dapper in his grey coattails.
Those great coattails he's probably been wearing since he was 25.
He's just been patching them up.
He looked in his element.
Sustainability.
Upcycling.
He did look in his element, didn't he?
He looked in his element despite still receiving cancer treatment every week.
You've said that he has been like a caged lion in these past few weeks.
I mean, the script here says that I'm supposed to roar, and if Steve Titherington, our editor, thinks I'm going to roar like a lion, he's
Go
got
on,
nothing
do it.
coming. Anyway, he's a busy old bee, isn't he? He's got a very packed summer schedule.
He's sort of hitting the ground running, isn't he? After coming back on public engagements, he's had that year on since the year anniversary of the coronation. He's looking forward to an inward state visit from Japan, the discussion about D-Day and how he's going to be involved with that. And I think, you know, they've announced those new patronages, so he's taken on 300 new charities, despite the fact that, you know, he's 75 and he's had cancer, or is still receiving treatment for cancer. There's a lot, isn't it?
Well, I thought what was interesting about all the mood music that came out from the Palace earlier this month and last month was that he's not going to be doing a full summer schedule. It won't be a full summer programme. And yet when you look at what you kind of know he's going to be at over the next few weeks, it's an unbelievably packed summer programme.
It's a lot.
For any 75-year-old, let alone one receiving cancer treatment, it's engagement after engagement after engagement. It's, you know, almost every day. A big set-piece moment, Trooping the Colour, D-Day possibly in France, probably in France with William, Garter Day. I'm told that he's going to be at Ascot almost every day. You know, it's a lot. And I picked up last week from William's people and some friends of William's that he's quite concerned about his father's schedule and actually knows he loves work and he's a workaholic, but he worries about him balancing his recovery.
And the Queen too, because the Queen probably said it best last week when she
Yeah.
said, "I'm trying to rein him in."
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Trying to hold him back. Yeah. I know. But I suppose that's where you see Charles, he's got bits of his mum there, hasn't he? Because the Queen, you know, everyone in the last few years, everyone's like, oh, do you think she'll abdicate? It's not really her vibe. It's not how she rolls. You know, she's job for life. And so is Charles. And he's
only just got the top
I
job,
know.
so he's not going to sort of give it up. I think he was hugely frustrated
stop, start, king.
by, the fact that he had to stop at all. And even when Camilla went away for a week's holiday and he was supposed to take a week's break, he naughtily filled his calendar with all sorts of a diary with all sorts of engagements that week when initially it had always been as a week's break anyway for him to take a break. But while she was away, he managed to like sneak in a few governors general.
Do you think there's anything in the fact that he started, then stopped, pressed pause, and now he's coming back sort of incredibly busy, despite what the palace say, because he's conscious he doesn't want to be the king who started his reign and then disappeared for a bit? Is there something about building his legacy quite fast now?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also a sign that he genuinely feels okay to do it. I think he genuinely is a lot better.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. But yeah, the legacy, he's always been a kind of king in a hurry, hasn't he? Because he's always wanted to try to make his mark as monarch, despite coming to the throne so late in life, after a lifetime, as the heir apparent.
Yeah. So I mean, you and I both spent quite a lot of time and thousands of words last week looking at the first year since the coronation. So how do we think the Carolean age is shaping up? I mean, it's been unexpected, the first year. Mm-hmm. What do you think are the key sort of standout things of what we're seeing Charles produce?
I think we're already seeing a huge change to the monarchy. We hear all about the kind of slimmed down monarchy, and he's made no secret of wanting that for years. And now here he is, and some by design, some by default, it's happened to him. But there's already this kind of modernisation. I think there's a softening of it as well. The fact that they released the picture of Charles and Camilla in the gardens at Buckingham Palace to mark that 1 year anniversary. It was very soft. He was looking lovingly at the Queen, who stood in for him.
She was centre stage, wasn't she, in that picture?
Yeah, she was. And I think that was they did that purposefully to kind of juxtapose the formality of last year's anniversary, last year's coronation. And the coronation, of course, even that wasn't, splendour of old. There weren't tiaras, there wasn't lots of bling. Obviously it was a huge, momentous pomp and pageantry celebration, but it wasn't what it has been in 1953. Even the invitation was kind of the Green King, wasn't it? It was very kind of natural, his love of the environment. So it's a softening, I think. And I think that's, however long he'll be monarch, and obviously it's not got to be anywhere near what his mother was, it's shaping the monarchy for years to come. And I think it's crucial, even though it will be a shorter reign, I think it will have a lasting impact in that respect of making it softer, making it more modern, transforming it.
Less formal.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think that's right. And I thought those pictures last week of him sitting in the chemotherapy chair talking to another patient in a chemotherapy chair was very powerful and much less formal. I don't recall ever seeing pictures like that of the Queen. Yes, she did hospital visits, the late Queen, but, she wasn't so hands-on, literally and metaphorically, I think. I think what's interesting is this sort of bulking that I picked up on of when we all wrote our pieces about 1 year in of the King's reign last year, I spoke to someone who really likes the King, a friend of the King's, who said, there isn't enough, we're not going at enough pace. He's got to be careful he doesn't become a caretaker king. And that phrase got picked up and used across everything. And my goodness me, everyone around Charles, the courtiers, I think I used the word harumphed. You knew it had riled him. Robert Hardman's book, it was across several chapters. He's not a caretaker king. But actually, I think there's something to be said for him overseeing, a smooth transition and keeping things quite steady. And I think people probably expected more change more quickly because he was quite a radical Prince of Wales. But he's in a different role now. And I just, when we say what does the Carolean age look like, I'm still slightly struggling to kind of understand or get a sense of what his wider manifesto is. But maybe that's fine. Maybe, as someone said last week, the change is hiding in plain sight. He's still pursuing things like the environment. Look at his speech at COP28. He's launching food waste projects. Those are things he was very interested in as Prince of Wales, which he's brought through to his, reign. Maybe that's the change that we're seeing. We're just, seeing it in a different way as king. So, Kate, we've had all three around this week. We've had the King, the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Sussex, the trio, the triangle, father and two sons. Where do you think, in terms of family dynamics, where do you think they're all at the moment?
Well, I thought there was a really telling point this week, because no one was talking about will William meet Harry while he's over here. It was all about will the King meet Harry while he's over there, over during his visit. And from a journalist perspective, that's quite interesting, because last time the story was William saying he had no plans to meet him. But now the rift is so deep and so widely accepted that that's not even a story anymore. No one assumes that William and Harry will ever meet. And I think that's really sad. But it's also, the story's moved on, the narrative's moved on, and that it's just now ingrained in people's minds. They don't talk. There's no way back.
We've been marking the coronation of the king 1 year on. And it always gets me thinking, if, God forbid, we were to have another coronation soon, and long live the king for, his health and my own sanity. But if we were to have another coronation in the next few years, would Harry be there? I don't think William would invite him, and I don't think Harry would come. And that's an extraordinary thing, isn't it?
I think that Harry is still part of the family while his father's still alive. I think when we move on to King William, I think it's a very different picture. Obviously, he's still part of the family in that, his birthright and all that sort of thing. But in terms of any invitations to Troop in the Colour, any kind of official coronation, I think it'd be very difficult for William to invite him to that. I just don't think it's going to happen.
So the first of many chats between us, Kate.
The monarchy endures.
And we will endure it along with them.
This is The Royals with Roya and Kate, our flagship royal podcast.
Wait, isn't it the only one?
Well, the only one that matters. And if you liked it particularly, let us know what you'd like to know about the royals and how we report on them. Okay. Bye from me, Kate Mancy, and Roya Nikkhah from The Times.
It's the Sunday Times, actually.
2 for the price of 2.
Very good value, I'd say.